We have an urgent question. Sheriff Secretary of State Robert Jenrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Justice if she will make a statement on the failure of the prison estate to protect staff from serious and sustained violence by high-risk inmates.
Minister.
Can I thank the right honourable gentleman for his question? I am shocked and saddened to hear about the serious assault against a prison officer which took place on Thursday the 8th of May at HMP Belmarsh. My thoughts are with the family and colleagues of this brave, hard-working prison officer at this time. We will not tolerate any violence towards staff against prison officers. Prisoners who are violent towards staff will face the full consequences of their actions. The incident at HMP Belmarsh is subject to a police investigation, and as such we are unable to comment further in any level of detail at this stage. The Prison Service has also commissioned an investigation. Terms of reference are being finalised. This will include details of what happened and why, and recommendations to prevent reoccurrences. We will provide updates to Parliament in due course. Separately, on the 22nd of April, we announced to Parliament an independent review of the recent terrible incident where staff were assaulted by Hasham Abedi at HMP Frankland. We will make further announcements in the coming days. Our prison officers are some of the hardest working and brave public servants this country has. We are committed to making sure they are safe at work and able to keep the public safe. We also announced at last Justice Orals that the Prison Service has commissioned a rapid review of access to and use of self-cook areas across the prison estate, including their use in special units. This review will report back with recommendations in June. We recently announced a review of conducted energy devices, tasers. There is a trial involving a small number of National Operational Response and Resilience Unit staff. Body-worn video cameras, Mr. Speaker, batons, parva spray, rigid bar handcuffs are currently available for use by staff, and protective body armour is already worn by specialist prison staff and by officers in cases where there is planned use of force or where safe systems of work for the management of high-risk prisoners dictates. We've also announced a review into whether protective body armour should be made available to frontline staff, which we'll report in June. I repeat, Mr. Speaker, that the safety and security of our frontline prison staff is our number one priority.
Robert Jenrick.
Mr. Speaker, let me place on record our sympathies to the prison officer injured at HMP Belmarsh. We wish them a full recovery and thank all prison officers for their courage in the face of growing danger. Let us be clear about what is happening in our prisons. Violence against officers has spiralled out of control. In just the past month, two of Britain's most dangerous terrorists, Axel Rudakabana and Hasham Abedi, have launched vicious attacks on officers in two of our supposedly most secure prisons. The Secretary of State has ordered a snap review into the attack at HMP Frankland. 3 weeks later, no answers and no action. Every day longer it goes on, the safety of officers is at risk. So I ask the Minister, when will it conclude? Why hasn't every prison officer exposed to dangerous inmates already been provided with a stab vest? Not in June, but now, today. I've spoken to officers who say attacks with boiling water are not uncommon. Will he commit today to order the removal of every kettle from high-risk prisoners? Not in June, but now, today. Mr. Speaker, this goes deeper than one review. Men like Rudakabana and Abedi glorify violence. They dream of martyrdom, and still governors pander to them. I couldn't care less if Rudakabana never had a hot drink again, nor would the British public. This culture of appeasement, of protecting the rights of convicted terrorists and criminals over the safety of our officers must end, and it must end now. If that means keeping them in cells with just a bed, so be it. If it means no contact, no privileges, and certainly no cups of tea, so be it. Let segregation truly and finally mean segregation. Because, Mr. Speaker, and I want to say this as clearly as I can, I'm warning the House now, if the government doesn't get a grip, a prison officer will be killed. We've had enough reviews. We need action. That's the least prison officers deserve.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are managing the most complex people in the most complex system. Our prison staff have to manage extremely dangerous people, and they do it with real bravery. And we will do whatever it takes to keep them safe. And that's why we've taken the actions we already have. All prisons carry out regular risk assessments and implemented associated safe systems of work. If a risk is identified regarding kettle use or intelligence is received, then one might be used in assault. The kettle will be withdrawn. And frankly, Mr. Speaker, for 14 years, kettles were used under the previous government's watch. They rightly trusted the professional skill and expertise of those running our prisons and working in our prisons, and that's what we are doing now.
Chair of the Select Committee, Andrew Slaughter.
Last week, the Justice Select Committee visited Wandsworth Prison and noted improvements, but from a very low base. We heard that the poor reputation of some prisons, including rising violence, makes recruitment more difficult. This is the legacy of 14 years of starving prisons of resources. So what is the current government doing to improve recruitment and retention of prison officers?
My honourable friend is completely correct. We inherited a prison system in crisis. Prisons were on the edge of collapse. Reducing violence in prisons is a key priority. And that's why we've taken the actions that we have in terms of building new prisons and in also the sentencing review to make sure that we've always got prison spaces to lock dangerous people up.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Josh Babber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No prison officer should go to work in fear that they may leave in an ambulance. I therefore send my sympathies and Liberal Democrat sympathies to the officer injured at HMP Belmarsh. But assaults on prison staff have doubled since 2015, a reality for which the Conservatives should hang their heads in shame. This government must now get a grip. The Prison Officers Association, who are holding their conference in my constituency this week, have requested more protective equipment. The MOJ is reviewing this. Will they accelerate the review to ensure that they get that support now, not next month? Recruitment and retention issues also compromise prison safety when it comes to prison officers. So what is the government doing to address this? And won't discontinuing prison officer grad schemes like Unlocked compromise this? And finally, how is the MOJ robustly rehabilitating violent offenders to reduce the risk that they pose to prison officers and our communities?
I thank the honourable member for his question. Immediately after the incident at HMP Frankland, the Lord Chancellor, myself and the prison officer in the other place met with the Prison Officers Association, and I know that was a very significant discussion and commitments were made to make sure that things are addressed properly and correctly, and the Prisons Minister in the other place will be speaking at the Prison Officers Association conference shortly. So the reviews that are in place are being done in fast time, but they need to be done properly so that we can learn the lessons and take the appropriate actions and have the input from the people who know exactly what is going on, which is the people in the workforce and the people that manage our prisons.
Linda Jess.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I confirm my interest as a member of the Justice Select Committee. Does the Minister agree that overcrowding in prisons is a cause of the increased violence towards our prison officers, and that this is a direct result of the way that the previous government dealt with our prison system? Therefore, can the Minister please outline what steps are currently being taken to reduce overcrowding in our prisons?
The honourable friend is completely right that prison overcrowding makes addressing these issues far more difficult. Yep. This is why the government has pledged to continue building the remaining 20,000 prison place programmes which the last government failed to deliver. In 10 months, this government has already added over 2,000 prison places, whilst the government that the members opposite supported added 500 places in 14 years.
Mr. McBain.
Mr. Speaker, surely as a minimum, any prisoner who assaults a prison officer should automatically forfeit any right to early release and all privileges. Does the Minister agree? And if so, when will he introduce that change? And if not, why not?
Well said.
The honourable member is right that anything that happens should be dealt with immediately by the prison authorities, and that's exactly what is happening. That's why these reviews are in place, to learn the lessons so that appropriate action can be taken to learn from this and put appropriate steps in place for the future, taking into account the issues she raised amongst other issues.
Kim Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government inherited violent, squalid prison estate, which makes the job of prison officers much more difficult and dangerous. The privatising of maintenance has contributed to overcrowding and the spiralling of violence towards prison officers. So can the Minister explain why contracts are being retendered, and will he release the report recommending more privatisation so we can all understand the logic behind this decision?
My honourable friend raises a question about prison maintenance, and that is always under review. Contracts were in place when this government came into place, which needed to be taken forward in order to ensure that our prisons are kept as safe as possible. Those who are assessed as posing a raised risk of violence are supported through a case management approach that's centred around the individual and addresses the underlying causes of their violence, including specific risk factors and needs to help them manage and move away from violent behaviours.
Sir Julian Smith.
Mr. Speaker, can I support the Shadow Secretary of State's request for accelerating the supply of stab vests? And can I ask the Minister for a bit more details on the government's thinking of the use of Taser? Because there's a long track record of Taser use in the UK, and it would seem we could also accelerate the use of Taser in prisons as quickly as possible.
I agree with the honourable member that this needs to be looked at as quickly as possible. That's why this summer an operational trial into tasers will be launched for specialised officers to help staff respond to high-risk incidents more effectively. The findings of this trial will inform any future decisions around the use of tasers in the prison estate. So we need to learn from what we do so that we can get it right in the future.
John MacDonald.
Can I declare an interest as an honorary life member of the Prison Officers Association? Can I thank the Minister for the working relationship he's established with the union since coming into office. But could I ask him to liaise with the POA and bring forward urgently a report, prison by prison, about staffing levels and also the timescale set aside for training staff, particularly to deal with violent prisoners that they're dealing with at the moment?
I thank my right honourable friend for his question, and I'm very happy to continue to work with the Prison Officers Association and other staff associations working in the prison sector to try and address the issues that he rightly raises.
Seamus Logan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister very graciously found time in his busy schedule to meet with me and colleagues recently to discuss the 68 is Too Late campaign. Would he agree that recent events prove the tremendous pressures that are on our prison officers' staff? And will he give an undertaking to me and the House that during the course of this Parliament the terms and conditions of prison officers could be reviewed, especially with a view to the 68 is Too Late campaign? Thank you.
I thank the honourable member for his question and thank him for meeting with me earlier in this Parliament to discuss these issues. And yes, these are things that need to be rightly kept under review, and the conversations taking place with the workforce through the Prison Officers Association and other bodies will continue to make progress in this matter.
Catherine Atkins.
Violence in prisons escalated for years under the previous government, who left our prisons at breaking point. What is the Minister doing to bring down levels of violence in our jails?
My honourable friend is right to point that out. A violence reduction training module is available to all staff to help them better understand the drivers of violence and how to mitigate and manage those risks, including the use of case management model for those at raised risks of being violent. Measures to ease prison crowding are vital for improving prison safety, as we know that crowded conditions can fuel violence in prisons. And in recent years, prisons have expanded security measures such as X-ray body scanners and airport-style enhanced gate security to tackle the smuggling of drugs, mobile phones and other contraband which can drive violence in prisons. We always have to be alert and moving things forward because the situation is forever changing.
Wesley Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister accept that the safety and security of our prison officers should always come before protecting the rights of convicted criminals? And will he provide stab vests and tasers to all those officers who request them?
Yes, I agree with him wholeheartedly that the safety and security of our prison staff must always come first and foremost. And I think I've already indicated that the review's going on in order to address the other part of his question. That needs to be done properly and effectively, and we'll come back to this House to inform this House in due course.
Jenko.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Violence in prisons rose sharply as investment and staffing fell under the previous government. I spoke to a prison officer who got an award for his bravery dealing with one of many incidents at the prison. He took his daughter to receive the award, and afterwards his daughter begged him to stop the job. He no longer was a prison officer after that. What is the government doing to halt the levels of violence and to increase staffing levels in our prisons?
Well, I congratulate that prison officer for the award that he got and the work that he does. Obviously, the Assaults on Emergency Workers Act 2018 requires courts to consider the fact that serious offences were committed against an emergency worker. The Act in 2022 doubled the maximum penalty to up to 2 years. So there are actions in place, but we need to be ever vigilant on this matter. And that's why the Right Honourable Member was right to bring this question, because we need to be ever vigilant and working ever harder with those brilliant people who run our prisons and work within our prisons.
Savile Roberts.
Marion Navarro, as co-chair of the Justice Union's parliamentary group, I know that unions have been raising the problem of safety and violence against staff in prisons for years under the previous government, who underfunded them and let them down. Will the Minister today commit to meet with unions at the launch in July of the newly updated Safe Inside Prisons Charter, developed by the Joint Unions in Prison Alliance, a coalition of 9 unions representing workers in prison, and that HMPPS will accept the recommendations of that charter?
I'm very happy to meet with those unions and with herself around that charter. Obviously, until we see the charter, it's difficult to know where things are going on that. But I'm sure that HMPPS will be proactive in working with all the associations on getting that charter right.
Thank you. Very colourful.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ministers will recall the horrific attack on prison staff at HMP Franklin and Durham last month. And while I was grateful for the Minister for Prisons' reply to my correspondence, I did note the lack of commitment around the issuing of the stab-proof vests on the high security estate. This is a key ask from the Prison Officers Association. Now, whilst I welcome the Minister's words today that will be looked into, can I plead with him that this will be done with some pace, because there are too many prison officers worried that will they come out of work in their own vehicle or in the back of an ambulance?
Where the assessment is needed for stab-proof vests now, they can be deployed. But following the recent incident at HMP Franklin, HMPPS has commissioned a review to establish whether it is necessary for prison officers to wear protective body armour routinely. This review will inform any decision on the use of protective body armour in the prison estate, and will report in June. So June is next month, so it's pretty quick, and rightly so, because this is an urgent issue.
Chairman Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all understand, I think, the need to strike the right operational atmosphere and balance in a prison. But in the interests of retention and recruitment of prison officers, which is absolutely key if our prison estate is to work effectively, I do hope that irrespective of what the review might advise, that the Minister and the Department will move very speedily to a position whereby the wearing of anti-stab clothing and the carrying of tasers and other equipment becomes de facto and routine, rather than merely in response to gleaned internal intelligence. Otherwise, there will be a crisis in both retention and recruitment of officers.
It's crucially important that prison officers are equipped with the right protective equipment and to do their job safely and securely. That's what the purpose of these reviews is to do, is to ensure that that is got right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of my constituents work at HMP Franklin, which is located in my honourable friend, the member for City of Durham's constituency. I met with representatives from the Prison Officers Association last week. Two of the concerns that they raised were about the equipment. They said that during the horrific terrorist attack by Hashim Abedi, they were unable to use batons because the space was too small to wield them in, and that he was so enraged that pepper spray had no effect on them. So clearly they need additional equipment. Will the Minister tell me what steps are being taken on that? And secondly, if it's the case as the POA told me, that it's activist lawyers and the courts that are insisting that these dangerous terrorist prisoners have access to kettles and the ability to use kitchens, will the government consider changes to primary legislation to enable these privileges to be removed from that category of prisoners?
Can I say straight away that access to kitchens has immediately been withdrawn. In terms of equipment, the review of equipment is taking place, and indeed the point my honourable friend makes about the intelligence that he's had from prison officers from HMP Franklin illustrates some of the complexity around that issue, which is why we need to take our time to get this right, whilst moving at pace and coming back to the House fairly quickly.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 32 prison staff were killed in Northern Ireland by terrorists and their criminal associates. What steps has the Minister taken to ensure that our prison office staff are both safe inside the prisons but also outside, as we see an escalation in terrorist activity across this United Kingdom as well? And will he also raise this issue at the Five Nations Forum of Prisons?
I can certainly commit to make sure this is raised at the Five Nations Forum. He raises a very sensitive, serious issue which needs to be properly addressed in a right and proper way, and I thank him for his question.
Thomas.
Mr. Speaker, I've met with constituents who are prison officers, and they would agree with the former Justice Secretary who said that prison officer cuts were too much. It's led to overcrowding and unsafe conditions. This Labour government is rebuilding the trust of prison officers with a 5% pay award, where the Conservatives ran away from making such an award. Would the Minister outline to me what engagement he's having with prison officers to understand what safety changes they want making, particularly around tasers and around stab-proof vests?
I mean, my honourable friend makes a good point about the way in which this government immediately recognised the need for an uplift in pay in line with the independent pay report, and took action straight away on that. As I said previously, immediately after the HMP Franklin terrible incident, the Lord Chancellor, the prisons officer in the other place, and myself met with the Prison Officers Association, and there are lines open to all the other staff associations involved across the piece. It's very important that we work with them to address this issue properly.
Jim Shallon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for his answers? He always comes to the Chamber with the answers that we hope we will have. It was shocking to read of the violent attack on prison staff by the Southport killer, and highlights the need for greater supervision and security measures for prisoners alike. So what steps will the Minister and Government take to tighten the prison privilege system? Take away their parole, for example, take away all their privileges, and if that doesn't work, then put them in solitary confinement. The evil killers that they are have forfeited all of their right to any privileges in this world. I think it's time a government took the steps in the right direction to ensure high-risk offenders do not have access to the same freedoms that could potentially be used to seriously harm those that risk their lives working in our prisons. Thank you.
The individual he refers to is clearly part of a police investigation at the moment, so it would be inappropriate for me to comment on that at this point. But the general point he makes about the management of very dangerous people in our prisons is a very good one, and that's why we rely on the expertise and experience of the prison staff and the prison officers, the prison governors.
Jonathan Branch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prison should be a rehabilitative place for the vast majority of prisoners. That's good for society, it's good for lowering crime, it's good for our economy. But there are a small number of prisoners in our prison system for whom it should not ever be about that. It is about punishment. The Southport murderer should die in jail. And if he cannot be in jail without threatening police officers, then he has forfeited his rights. Does the Minister agree?
What I do agree with is that punishment and public protection are two very important parts of the reason why people go to prison. As I said to the honourable member opposite, I cannot comment on a live police investigation, and he will understand the reasons why.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his response to the urgent question. And like everybody in this House, my thoughts are with the officer who was attacked. Speaking to friends of mine who have worked in the prison service over the last couple of years, it is clear this isn't a new problem, but it is vital that we tackle this issue. Can I ask the Minister to echo his commitment to ensure that everyone, be they retail workers in Harlow or prison officers in Belmarsh, are safe at work?
I absolutely give that commitment that this government will do all it can to make sure people are as safe as possible when they go to work. Nobody should suffer what happened to these very brave, wonderful prison officers doing their duty. That should not happen to anybody when they go to work.
Right, that completes that urgent question. Let the front bench change over.